Hi, welcome to Meet the Candidates. I'm George Latimer, New York State Assemblyman. This November 8th, we're going to be going to the polls in Larchmont, Mamaroneck, Rye, and sections of New Rochelle, and voting for a number of different positions, including town council, town supervisor, town justice within the town of Mamaroneck, and in the city of Rye for mayor and council positions. But there is a position that's going to be running in all of those different communities, and that is Westchester County Legislator from the 7th District. On this edition of Meet the Candidates, we'll be talking to incumbent county legislator, my friend Judy Myers, who is seeking a full term in that position. And Judy, welcome once again to Meet the Candidates.
Thank you.
We were just sitting in these seats 6 months ago.
6 months ago.
When you ran and won a special election to serve in this seat.
Yes.
Tell us what those 6 months have been like for you in White Plains.
These past 6 months, George, have been an absolute whirlwind of learning, meeting new people, learning the ropes, figuring out the background of issues, learning how to make my voice clearly heard, figuring out the steps that I need to take. But it's been absolutely fantastic. And I don't need to tell you because you were in this position, but there is something inherently incredibly exciting about representing this district and being up there against the other legislators and fighting specifically for this district, which I am loving.
Well, it's a little different than being on a town council position. You served
Absolutely.
6 years as a Mamaroneck
6
town
years
councilwoman.
as town.
And you were one of a number of people who represented
Right.
the turf. Here, this is your district, and you represent it, and you're
Right.
you're the voice for this area
Yes.
as those issues come up. Probably the most...
Although I should add to that, because
Sure.
I think it's worth mentioning, because of the background that I had and serving for 6 years on the Mamaroneck Town Board, which I am happy to say is perhaps, I am now seeing is perhaps one of the most functional town boards and one of the most functional forms of government in Westchester County. And because of that experience and the good experience of being able to work together on a bipartisan basis, across the board, across the table, it's definitely had an impact on the way that I'm now looking at the County Board of Legislators. And I do see that as a differentiation with even some of the other legislators.
You know, that's critical experience to bring to the kind of entity that the county government is. When we talk about issues in this area, probably the single thing that links all of the communities that we both represent at our respective levels of government is the issue of the environment, and very specifically the Long Island Sound.
Yes.
And issues like David's Island all the way up to Playland are constant issues that you
Yes.
have to deal with. Tell us a little bit about your efforts on behalf of David's Island and anything else that ties into the Long Island Sound and to the environmental issues that you've focused on.
This is actually, David's Island is actually the first big issue that I began to grapple with when I came on board. The issue of David's Island had actually been sort of on the back burner, especially since you had left, and it was just sitting there. There had been an agreement in 2002 between the county executive and the city of New Rochelle that the county would at some point purchase David's Island for $6.5 million. But that's as far as it had gone. They had done a study. The county had funded a study of the remediation of the island, but it was not an in-depth study. It was a good study, but when it was used as a study for the rationale behind applying for some state funding, the answer came back that the state would like to do a study of its own, and that's where everything was hung up, because we needed to enter into an agreement with New Rochelle, between New Rochelle and the county, to come up with some funding, 10% of the entire cost of the study, which was a $100,000 study. The county and New Rochelle were expected to come up with $20,000, and is that right? No, 100. At any rate, we went in together on this study, and I was able to get my fellow legislators to move forward on this and approve it so that we could enter into this first phase study and apply for this grant with New York State.
Now, when we look at David's Island, we're looking at the last 80 acres of undeveloped property on the waterfront. And I guess we've seen over the years, and certainly Larchmont residents have followed this closely, potentials for big developments, big apartment complexes, followed by all sorts of visionary plans. Over the years have been plans for 100 different things. What is your sense of what would work best on David's Island and what best protects the ecology of the Sound and what is most in the interest of the people of your district?
To keep it open and to keep it, to make it public access to the Sound, which would be virtually one of the only points where you could have, it would certainly be one of the only points in southern Westchester where you could have public access to the Sound. You have it in Playland, you have it, but otherwise there's really no county facility that provides access to the Sound. And environmentally, it's critical. It's at the island itself is at a critical point, in a critical spot in the Long Island Sound where it does act as a filter. It provides a refuse place for an enormous number of species of birds. It has a great deal of wildlife on the island and vegetation.
Right.
It is currently basically a waste that's just sitting there. And the very fact that it's still available is mind-boggling, because it could have so easily been picked up by developers and taken out of the public, out of its public usage possibilities. And thanks to the efforts of all those Larchmont, Mamaroneck, and New Rochelle people who fought years ago to keep it out of the hands of developers, it is still a viable public space. And that's what I would like to see happen with David's Island. But there are many steps before we can get to that.
And at least the first step that you've been able to accomplish in these 6 months is a joint action by the county along with the city to apply for funding to help make these things
I think I said 10,000. It's actually, yes, $50,000 each. It's paying for $100,000 of this $1 million study. What's happening there right now, which is very exciting, and I was fortunate enough to get to take part in the actual groundbreaking ceremony, is that through the efforts of Congresswoman Nita Lowey, $4 million has been granted so far by a federal grant to New Rochelle to begin to do some work on David's Island. And it's the Army Corps of Engineers who have started out there beginning to look at the buildings that have been designated as non-historical and definitely in need of being removed. There are a lot of buildings that are collapsing inwards, and they're actually very dangerous.
Right.
So they have been determined that they're not of historical value. There's a whole committee that's been put together. Barbara Davis of New Rochelle is just absolutely phenomenal because of her knowledge of what is historical and what's not on David's Island. They are doing an archaeological dig in the area of these buildings to make sure that nothing is removed that could be of value, even in the soil.
Right.
And the only hang-up that we've just had, the only little sort of blip on the map right now, is that because it's the Army Corps of Engineers who are doing the work, many of them have been called away. The workforce has been diminished because of Hurricane Katrina, obviously, and so once it's deemed that they can come back, the work will resume.
We'll be able to go from there. Let's starting now that we've discussed David's Island, we start to move up the coast. We deal with issues along the Sound that relate to the restoration of wetlands. We deal with the sewer treatment plants that exist in New Rochelle, Mamaroneck, Rye, and then beyond your district in Portchester. Playland is a major county facility on the water. Marshlands, J Property, both have elements of the county. Give me a sense of how your interest, and you're a boater anyway, and on a personal level, you know the Long Island Sound.
I'm not a boater, I'm a rider.
You're a rider, okay, well, we'll give your husband the credit for being the pilot of the ship. But what are some of the environmental priorities that you've set, with David's Island being one of them, in order to improve the quality of life on Long Island Sound?
The biggest priority and the biggest impact that I'm finding that I am having, and this is absolutely amazing to me because it's so rewarding, and it's one of those areas where you really can see that you're having an impact and that you're being effective, is that I can act, being at the county level, I can act as a liaison and a facilitator between the individual municipalities and the county. And for all of these county areas where we do touch the Long Island Sound and where we have an impact on the Long Island Sound, I can work with both the municipality and the county to try to make things run smoothly, to bring projects around. I've been involved recently there's a sludge force main that goes right down the Boston Post Road. I'm sure you remember it.
I hope nobody's planning to eat dinner while we're
I know,
watching this
exactly. Well,
area.
we won't go to what this does, but at
Right.
any rate, these are areas that the county has to take care of, but
Right.
but in doing so, it interrupts daily life for the residents. So I've been working with the 3 municipalities impacted to make sure we know the dates. We've been working with, I've gotten involved with the Village of Larchmont, making sure that we're not digging up their new sidewalks. They're actually holding off the finishing of some of their sidewalks until this project is completed, so we don't have to, so Larchmont doesn't have to do it again. I'm now working with the Department of Environmental Facilities in the county on a pump station in Larchmont because there's some odor abatement programs that are going on where it could impact the building itself and where we need to have the residents being involved, getting their opinions, making sure that they're at the table because they live right next door and their opinions are extremely valuable. So it's being able to get in there. It's the same thing with Playland. My objective since taking office has been very similar to yours, making sure that Playland is a good neighbor. The county owns Playland, but it's situated in the city of Rye. And so above all, it has to be a good neighbor to Rye. And that's where I can act as a liaison. I can see every single thing that's being planned for Playland and make sure that it is not in some way going to impact negatively on the people of Rye. And I find that a very, very important role and very satisfying because I am at a point, going back to when I was first elected, I've been very fortunate to have been put on 6 different committees, several of which I asked for. One that I asked for and have been put on is Parks and Recreation. Having a direct access to, conversations with, and input on the running of Playland.
Right.
I've been put on the all-important Budget and Appropriations Committee, which then allows me to see each and every expenditure that's coming through and be able to have a say on it before it even gets to the floor of the legislature. And I am the chair of Community Affairs, which is a committee that actually I feel very comfortable chairing because it does draw on a lot of my experience from my community experience for all these past years in Larchmont and Mamaroneck.
That sounds like a very well-rounded set of situations you're dealing with. Let's touch on another issue that's been very much in the news recently and all the way up to the federal government level, but it does have its impact locally here, and that's the issue of eminent domain. Supreme Court decided in a specific Connecticut-based case of the power of the government to define what was a public use, and they defined it within a broader context. How do you feel about that decision, and how do you react as a county official to what the county ought to do regarding eminent domain and its eminent domain authority?
Eminent domain touches a nerve for me, having spent a great deal of time when I was on the town board, especially originally, working to fight against IKEA, which was an area which was a retail development that could have gone into place partially because of the city of New Rochelle being able to invoke eminent domain and invoke their power of eminent domain. There is a bill that is being developed right now in the county legislature. I've just signed on as a sponsor of it, and I think it has a very, very good chance of being voted in and to become a law that would limit Westchester County from using its power of eminent domain for the benefit of a private development,
Right.
a private company, if
Right.
it's not for the public good. Now, the United States Supreme Court has said that the development of taxes, that increasing revenue through taxation is for the public good, and that you can draw a correlation between that and development. But this legislation would prohibit and would say that for anything that any place where the county is going to use its powers of eminent domain, that it would have to go through the county legislature and be approved by a 2/3 vote.
So it creates some greater check and balance on the use
Absolutely.
of it, because it can't be
Absolutely.
used just sort of unilaterally
Well, I think we're
in one
seeing
fashion.
areas where we are asking, we're not even asking, we're telling people to get out of their homes, out of their businesses, so that a large development can come in. And I'm not sure that is really. I disagree with the U.S. Supreme Court. I don't think that is really for the public good. But I think it's an area that each government actually should begin to really get involved in.
Well, I think you see, too, in communities like Mamaroneck Town and Larchmont or Rye City that you represent, the community's ethic is to try to be as much in harmony with its residential population rather
Absolutely.
than try to develop things that may not be popular there.
Absolutely.
And there is a piece of legislation at the county that you're a co-sponsor of?
I have signed on to be a co-sponsor with this, yes,
Okay.
and it's bipartisan. It has been drafted by Legislator Maizano and Legislator Abenanti, a Republican and a Democrat. And I believe I think all of the support is bipartisan, which is excellent.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you're chair of the Committee on Community Affairs in the county legislature, which is a very impressive thing. It's going to be many years before I get to chair anything in Albany. But in your capacity as chairing that committee, what are some of the priorities you're tackling, even if they're broader than the district? What are some of those things that are on your agenda right now in the committee that you chair?
We have one of our agenda items is part of the Help America Vote Act, which is looking into, for the county to be looking into what kind of new voting machines to go with. We are under a mandate to have new voting machines, a new method of voting in place by 2006. And right now the discussion has been centered on choosing between machines that are very similar to the cash machines in a bank.
Touch screen,
The touch screens,
electronic.
exactly,
Okay.
versus an optical scan machine, which actually takes a paper ballot and which one has penciled in the bubbles, similar to taking an SAT test.
Right.
And the optical scan, which has been used by the County Board of Elections for absentee ballots. And we're talking to town clerks. I attended a number of public hearings that had been held to hear what people are thinking.
Right.
And this is a huge topic of discussion. But the Community Affairs Committee runs the gamut. We have items before us dealing with the ethical treatment of animals. We've had a number of meetings with groups that are protesting the use of exotic animals in circuses. And Westchester County does host a circus every year. So this is something we've been working with Parks and Recreation, talking about whether there is a possibility perhaps of moving to a different kind of circus. So these are topics that are in discussion.
It sounds very eclectic. You'll be
It is,
touching
and
on a host of different
that's another
areas.
very interesting,
Yeah.
makes it even more interesting because it is so eclectic. So I'm also on the Health Committee. We just had a very, very interesting committee meeting with Medicare rights groups, Medicare information groups,
Right.
because there are big changes coming in Medicare. And probably at the same time that this goes on the air, we'll all be hearing about these Medicare changes regarding prescription coverage. And we have such an active senior citizen population and such active senior citizen groups in this district, all the way from down at Larchmont Library and St. Augustine's all the way up through the Rye Rec Center, where active groups come together, that one of the things I mean to do and make sure that I will do is to make sure that we get these discussions coming out to the individual senior centers so that our seniors know how to adapt to this new legislation.
Let's stay with the healthcare area for a second. You walked in the door 6 months ago, and you walked into the middle of a very intense set of problems that relate to the Westchester Medical Center. Problems that have been building up for a number of years, and probably not with much of a public eye until the last year or so. But as a new person walking in the door, how have you assessed the issues at the medical center, and what kinds of positions have you taken in terms of what you see as the path from where we are to where we ought to be?
Well, as you said, this has been going on a very long time, so I definitely feel very much like a brand newcomer to this scene, especially since many of my fellow legislators have been working on this and dealing with this for a long time. But I have spent a lot of time trying to get up to speed. I've attended a lot of meetings on the medical center, especially with the consultants who have been brought in to analyze the situation and to recommend the implementation of a lot of changes. We've also met with the labor unions to hear their side of the story and what their interests are. So it's an evolving situation. The positive is that we're beginning to see the debt numbers go down, but there is still a hefty debt. Another positive turn of events that's happened under my watch is the ability, and I will vote on this, it hasn't come up for a vote yet, we have been able to refinance the tobacco bonds that Westchester County issued a number of years ago, and like refinancing your mortgage, there's an ability to refinance the bonds. We had originally thought it was going to bring in $27 million, and the idea was, but had to be approved by the legislature, to give that to the Westchester Medical Center as the county share of its bailout. It turned out, because of the excellent credit rating that Westchester County has and the market itself, we were able to bring in $57 million. So now again, this is a one-time shot in the arm, and it doesn't answer the ongoing question of, but how are we going to keep the medical center solvent year to year on an ongoing basis? And that's where we're looking to the state.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And frankly, to the other counties. 40% of the patients at Westchester Medical Center come from other counties. Counties that don't have to have county medical centers because they can rely on Westchester Medical Center, and because Westchester Medical Center is so good and such an excellent institution. So those areas, those avenues are being pursued. I personally think the business community in Westchester County could come to the table and help out. I know the business community in New York City has done that with several hospitals, and I think because Westchester Medical Center, a strong medical center makes for a strong county, and because of a strong Westchester County, we have Westchester business that thrives here. I think it behooves Westchester business to get very involved with the medical center as well and help to keep it afloat.
Well, we're all stakeholders in this
Absolutely.
mix of things. A lot of the folks who live in this area may not necessarily think in terms of the medical center as the place to go for certain kinds of actions. Because we live here in the Sound Shore, both you and I, as well as the people who are watching, we often have a predisposition to just go down into the city, straight down the Metro North route into Manhattan. But
so we benefit because we do live close. But the minute you start going up county, Westchester Medical Center is the only, I don't need to tell you this, but it's the only tertiary care facility between Manhattan and Albany. So the minute you're halfway up in the county, you're much better off going to Valhalla than trying to go either up to Albany or into the city.
In this term that you're serving, the unexpired term that I've
that you had
from, you haven't yet had to vote on a county budget. So
No.
your first opportunity to do that will come in December of this year.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts in advance of some of the sections of the county budget that you're going to take a particularly close eye in looking at? Because it is true that during your tenure on the Mamaroneck Town Council, you, and to their credit, the bipartisan nature of the Mamaroneck Town Council has done a good job of keeping taxes moderated, better than in other places in the county. What are some of the areas in the county budget, Judy, that when we get to that point, you're going to be looking at as possible areas of cost efficiency and as a way to keep county taxes under control?
Well, I think my objective is to approach it in the same way that I did the town budget, and going through each department and each line by line, with a fine-tooth comb, looking for changes versus the previous year, looking and making sure that each department rationalize any change in expenditure, and especially any increase in expenditure or any expected loss in revenue. I would not want to see us increasing county government at this point. I don't think that Westchester County at this point should increase its government. I wouldn't want to see new departments added on, frankly. I think there has been a great deal of slimming down. There probably is room for more, and that's something I would be looking for. And just, looking for efficiencies wherever we can find them.
Right. I think it's important to note, for the folks who will be making these assessments in the campaign, that for those people who are watching who live in the village of Larchmont, live in the unincorporated town of Mamaroneck, and sections of Mamaroneck Village, such as Harbor Heights and Washingtonville, that this year their county taxes went down 9%.
Absolutely.
And if there's anybody watching in Rye City, where I happen to live, our county taxes went down 7%. So there's a lot of talk about property taxes. They're legitimate concerns, and they're a combination of municipal taxes, school, and county.
Right.
But the vast majority of residents of your district actually had a fairly good decrease in the county tax portion of their bill, whatever the other pieces might have been.
But unfortunately, we all look at what comes in the mail and we gasp at the bottom line and say, oh my God, look at this increase.
Right.
And yes, it's made up of municipal and county and the schools. But it's something I think I am very mindful of, and I think we all should be, that it is becoming extremely expensive to live in these communities, and we have to watch. We have to watch each and every penny that we spend, because we cannot take for granted that our residents, that we can continue to pay and continue to have huge increases.
No, there's no question.
Because we'll end up with either nobody living here because we can't afford to, or budgets that don't get passed, or especially a school budget. I mean, I think we are at a point where, and we've been at this point, where we have to be very, very careful and not take anything for granted.
Hopefully the state can be a better partner than we have been in the last few years on these things. Even as much as we talk about these issues, we should talk a little bit about you, about who you are, because part of what you do is the positions you take, and part of it is who you are and how you process. So tell us a little bit about your family, your non-governmental involvements in the community, and some of the things that make up for your non-governmental life.
Well, as you know, I think I've known you almost as long as I've lived here. I have lived here with my family since 1982, and we spent 3 years overseas, but came back to this area, and I raised my kids here. They are both in college. They are both in California. I am hoping they will come back after their brief sojourn there. Once they discover what it's like to live there, they can come home. But this is, and I have come through community activities, starting with preschool and then Junior League of Westchester on the Sound, which is a great, great training ground for community activism. Then into the PTA, and then into town government. And it's, and I am having a really exciting time getting to know Rye. You live in a great community. It really is, it's wonderful. I really feel excited about representing Rye. And so, but it's all based on, I think, this incredible community experience, and realizing that that's really what is at the base. It should be at the base of all politics. It's really, I mean, we're talking about people and how we all live here and live here together, and how we can live well together and live in harmony and enjoy ourselves and be able to live here and raise our children here and be affordable enough for them to come back.
We've been talking with Judy Myers, Westchester County legislator from the 7th Legislative District, who represents all of Larchmont Village, all of the unincorporated part of Mamaroneck Town, all of Mamaroneck Village, Rye Neck, and the town side, all of the city of Rye, and 2 key neighborhoods in New Rochelle, Bayberry, and Larchmont Woods. She is running for another term, a full term, on the county legislature. In this November's election, she's going to be on the ballot on the Democratic line, the Independence Party line, and the Working Families Party line. And between now and Election Day, which comes on Tuesday, November 8th, there'll be some debates ahead and an opportunity to fully understand some of the issues that look forward. I'm George Latimer. Thanks for watching Meet the Candidates, and most importantly, make sure that you vote on Tuesday, November 8th. Thank you, and have a good day.